"We need you to babysit again. You don't have a real job anyway," my sister said. I quit my remote job that afternoon. When she came back, I handed her my resignation letter and the invoice. My sister always knew exactly where to stick the knife. It was a talent, really. A dark, twisted surgical skill she had honed over 40 years of shared blood and bad history. This time, the operating theater was a family Zoom call, and the knife was aimed directly at the soft, vulnerable tissue of my newly constructed life. The call was supposed to be about setting up a durable power of attorney for our parents, a dry but necessary piece of life admin. My mother's memory was getting foggy, and my father's hands shook too much to sign checks. It was time. Amanda, as the eldest and a self-proclaimed financial whiz, was leading the proceedings. I watched her on my screen, her face a mask of competent concern, framed by a bookshelf filled with leather-bound non-fiction she'd never read. She shared her screen, presenting a series of spreadsheets and legal documents that made my stomach clench. "As you can see," she said, her voice dripping with faux patience, "I've outlined a plan for managing Mom and Dad's portfolio. I'll be the primary agent, of course. It just makes the most sense, given my proximity and my experience." She paused, and her eyes, even through the pixelated haze of the video call, found mine. And given Chloe's situation, there it was, the first delicate incision. My situation was a polite euphemism for the spectacular implosion I'd had 5 years ago, a messy divorce, a subsequent deep depression, and a brief but terrifying affair with prescription painkillers to numb the wreckage. I'd clawed my way back, piece by painful piece. I had a therapist I trusted, a sobriety I guarded with my life, and a stable, if modest, remote job as a technical writer. I was proud of that job. It was my proof of life, my certificate of resurrection. Amanda continued, clicking through her presentation. "Obviously, we need someone stable and reliable at the helm, someone with a clear head." She brought up another document, a budget she'd created for our parents' care. "Now, there are some discrepancies I've noticed in their recent bank statements. Small withdrawals, a few hundred here and there, nothing major, but it's a pattern." She looked at me again, her expression now one of profound, sorrowful disappointment. It was a look she'd perfected in our childhood, usually right before telling our parents I was the one who broke the lamp. My blood ran cold. I knew what she was doing. Over the past year, my parents would occasionally call me, confused about an online bill or needing cash for the gardener, and I'd help them, pulling money from their account with their debit card and their full permission, always handing them the cash and the receipt. I never thought twice about it. It was just helping. Amanda was now twisting these acts of kindness into a narrative of petty theft. She was painting me as an untrustworthy, unstable leech, pilfering from our aging parents. "Chloe," she said, her voice softening into a tone of cloying pity that made my skin crawl. "I know things have been hard for you, and we all know you don't have a real job anyway, just that little hobby on your computer. It must be a struggle to make ends meet." The words from the prompt, delivered with such venomous precision. "If you needed money, you should have just asked. We're family. We could have helped you. You didn't have to resort to this." A wave of heat washed over me. Rage, pure and white-hot, mixed with the old, familiar shame she was so adept at conjuring. My mouth went dry. I tried to speak, to defend myself, but the words were stuck behind a wall of shock. My other brother, Mark, shifted uncomfortably on the screen. My parents just looked confused, their faces slack with age and incomprehension. Amanda had the stage, and she was playing her part beautifully. She was the responsible daughter, forced to expose her troubled, thieving sister for the good of the family. I was about to disconnect, to just flee the virtual room and shatter something, when a new face appeared in the grid of participants. The little black square that had been labeled Michael Thorne suddenly flickered to life. It was our uncle, our mother's younger brother, Uncle Mike. He was a forensic accountant, a man who lived and breathed numbers and who had a bullshit detector so finely tuned, it was practically a superpower. He'd been invited to the call as a courtesy, a professional third party to rubber stamp Amanda's plan. I had assumed he was just listening with half an ear while doing his own work. I was wrong. "Amanda," Uncle Mike said. His voice was calm, but it cut through the tension like a razor. "That's a very serious accusation. You have proof of this, of course?" He hadn't turned his camera on, but his voice filled the silence. He was the hidden advantage I never knew I had. He was the unseen observer. Amanda faltered for a fraction of a second, her confident smirk wavering. "Well, Mike, the proof is in the bank statements. A pattern of cash withdrawals from ATMs near Chloe's apartment." She recovered quickly, her voice regaining its authoritative edge. "It's circumstantial, but it's highly suggestive. And given Chloe's history..." "Is it?" Uncle Mike interrupted. "Because I took the liberty of looking over the last 12 months of statements this morning. You sent them over yesterday, remember?" A long, heavy pause. "I also see a pattern of much larger transfers, $5,000 and $10,000 at a time, moved from your parents' primary checking account into a brokerage account opened 6 months ago. An account registered solely in your name, Amanda." The air went out of the virtual room. My own breathing stopped. I stared at Amanda's face on the screen. The mask of competent concern melted away, replaced by a flicker of pure animal panic. She had no idea he'd actually looked. She thought he was just a prop, a name on a list to lend her scheme legitimacy. She had monologued monologued her way right into his trap. That was for investment purposes, she stammered, her voice suddenly shrill, to generate more income for their care. I was going to tell everyone once the returns started coming in. It's a complex strategy. I didn't want to worry you with the details. A complex strategy, Uncle Mike repeated, his tone flat and devoid of emotion. Is that what you call transferring your parents' retirement savings into a high-risk penny stock fund that has lost 60% of its value in the last 3 months? Because that's what I call it. I also call it fraud and elder financial abuse. He still hadn't turned on his camera. He was a disembodied voice of judgment, a ghost in the machine she had built to destroy me. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a universe reordering itself. For years, my family's solar system had revolved around the gravitational pull of Amanda's narrative. Amanda the successful, Amanda the stable, Chloe the mess. Now, in the space of 30 seconds, that entire system had been annihilated. Amanda's face was a crumbling ruin of disbelief and fury. She opened her mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say. He had the receipts. He had the real receipts. My shock began to recede, replaced by a strange, chilling clarity. This wasn't just about money. This was about erasure. Amanda wasn't just trying to steal from our parents. She was trying to steal my recovery, my credibility, my very identity as a functional human being. She needed me to be the designated failure so that no one would ever look too closely at her. The petty cruelties, the constant undermining, the demands for free babysitting because I didn't have a real job, it was all part of the same campaign. It was designed to keep me small, to keep me down, to keep me too busy and too broken to ever question her. Amanda abruptly ended the Zoom meeting. The screen went blank, leaving me staring at my own reflection in the dark monitor. My face was pale, my eyes wide. I could hear my heart hammering against my ribs. My brother Mark called me a minute later. Chloe, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. His voice was thick with shame. I listened, but I felt strangely distant, as if I were floating above my own body. Then the intervention happened, swift and decisive. Uncle Mike called me next. Chloe, he said, his voice firm but kind. Are you okay? I couldn't answer. I just made a small, wounded sound. Okay, listen to me. She's not going to get away with this. Not this time. I'm coming over. And tomorrow morning, first thing, we're calling a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. We're calling Helen Croft. She eats people like your sister for breakfast. He disconnected, and I was left with the weight of his words. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The initial confrontation had ended, but the war was about to start. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I sat down and opened a blank document, not for my technical writing job, but for me. The title was simple, The Amanda File. My hands shook, but I began to write. I wrote down the conversation from the Zoom call, word for word, as best I could remember. Then I went further back. I started a timeline. Every snide comment, every emergency where I had to drop everything to watch her kids, every time she'd borrowed money and forgotten to pay it back, every time she'd told a story at a family dinner that subtly painted me as incompetent or unstable. It felt like lancing a wound. The poison of years poured out of me and onto the screen. I dug through old emails, searching her name, the requests, phrased as demands, the backhanded compliments, the casual dismissals of my life and my work. I found the email from last Christmas where she'd sent a family-wide update mentioning her promotion, Mark's new house, and then, as an aside, hoping Chloe finds her footing in the new year. I saved it. I dug through text messages. Can you pick up Leo from soccer? This meeting is running late. Hey, Mom said you helped her with her computer. Can you make sure you didn't install any viruses? Remember, you owe me for that dinner. It was like $80. A dinner I had paid for. I screenshot everything. By the time Uncle Mike arrived, I had a dozen pages of notes and a folder full of digital evidence. He walked in, took one look at my pale face and the obsessive glow of the laptop screen, and gently closed the lid. Okay, he said softly. That's enough for tonight. This is a marathon, not a sprint. We'll need you to be strong. He made me a cup of tea and we sat in silence. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly seen. I wasn't Chloe the mess. I was Chloe, the victim of a calculated long-term campaign of psychological and financial abuse, and I was finally ready to fight back. The next morning, we sat in the polished wood and leather office of Helen Croft. She was a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and a sharper haircut. She listened without interruption as Uncle Mike laid out the financial details, his voice a calm, damning monotone as he detailed the brokerage account, the high-risk trades, the forged electronic permissions. He handed her a USB drive with the bank statements and his preliminary analysis. Then, she turned to me. And the rest? She asked. Her gaze wasn't pitying, it was appraising. She was measuring my capacity to withstand what was coming. I took a deep breath and started talking. I told her everything. Not just about the money, but about the constant, grinding erosion of my self-worth. I told her about the babysitting, how Amanda had framed it as a favor to me, a way to give my empty life purpose. I told her about the smear campaign within the family, the whispers about my stability, the way she used my past struggles as a weapon to isolate me. When I finished, my voice was raw. Helen Croft steepled her fingers and looked at me for a long moment. Your sister, she said, her voice devoid of any emotion but professional assessment, is is a classic narcissist with antisocial tendencies. This isn't just about money, Mr. Thorne. It's about control and punishment. She's punishing you, Chloe, for surviving, for getting better. Your recovery invalidated her narrative of you as the family tragedy, so she had to create a new one. Hearing it stated so clinically, so bluntly, was like a physical blow, but a necessary one. It validated every gut feeling I'd ever had. What can we do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Legally, Helen said, we have a very strong case for the recovery of the misappropriated funds and for Amanda's immediate removal as power of attorney. We'll file an emergency petition with the probate court. That's the easy part. She leaned forward. The hard part will be the retaliation. She will come after you. She will try to destroy your reputation, your relationships, your peace of mind. Her goal will be to make you drop the suit, to break you down until you crawl back and apologize for daring to expose her. Are you prepared for that? I looked at Uncle Mike, who gave me a firm, steady nod. I thought about the real job comment. I thought about the years of being made to feel small and worthless. I thought about my parents, whose life savings were being gambled away to fuel my sister's ego. Yes, I said, and the word felt solid, real. I'm prepared. The first salvo from Amanda's side came a week later. It was a formal response to our petition, filed by a lawyer from a notoriously aggressive downtown firm. The document was a masterpiece of character assassination. It painted me as a vindictive, mentally unstable recovering addict with a history of erratic behavior. It claimed I had a vendetta against my successful older sister and was colluding with my uncle to wrest control of our parents' assets for my own gain. It twisted my depression into a sign of chronic unreliability and my sobriety into a fragile state that could shatter at any moment. Every insecurity I had ever had was laid bare in cold, legal language. My past was weaponized, my therapy sessions reframed as evidence of my disturbed mental state. The document requested the court dismiss our petition and order a psychiatric evaluation for me to determine if I was fit to even participate in legal proceedings concerning my parents' welfare. Reading it felt like being flayed alive. I sat at my kitchen table, the pages spread out before me, and I couldn't breathe. The old voices, the ones I had worked so hard in therapy to silence, came roaring back. She's right. You are a mess. You are unstable. Who are you to challenge her? The shame was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. This was exactly what Helen Croft had predicted. Amanda wasn't just defending herself. She was launching a counter-offensive designed to obliterate me. That night was my rock-bottom crisis. The urge to numb the pain, to find an escape, was overwhelming. My old doctor's number was still in my phone. One call, one convincing story about back pain, and I could have a prescription. I could just check out for a few days, make the screaming in my head stop. I held the phone in my hand, my thumb hovering over the contact. The temptation was a physical ache. It was a siren song promising quiet and darkness. Instead of making the call to the doctor, I called my sponsor. Her name was Sarah, a no-nonsense woman who had been sober for 20 years. I didn't even say hello. I just started sobbing, gasping out the words from the legal document, the accusations, the shame. She's winning, Sarah. She's making it all true. Sarah listened patiently until I had cried myself out. Then she said, in her calm, gravelly voice, "Of course that's what she's doing. That's the addict's playbook, and your sister is an addict. She's addicted to control, to drama, to being the victim. And what do we do when an addict tries to drag us down into their chaos?" She paused. "We hold on to our sobriety. We trust our program. We do not pick up no matter what. This pain you're feeling right now, this is the poison leaving your system. Let it. Don't push it back down with a pill." Her words were an anchor in the storm. She was right. Amanda's tactics were the tactics of an abuser, designed to provoke a reaction, to make me relapse so she could point and say, "See, I told you she was unstable." My sobriety wasn't a weakness. It was my greatest strength. It was proof that I could endure hell and walk out the other side. I deleted the doctor's number from my phone. I took a deep breath. The battle wasn't over, and I would not be a casualty. The next phase of Amanda's attack was to mobilize the family. She started with our brother, Mark. He called me a few days later, his voice strained. "Chloe, I just got off the phone with Amanda. She's a wreck. She says this is all a huge misunderstanding. She said she was going to surprise Mom and Dad with the profits from the investment, and that you and Uncle Mike have twisted the whole thing. Mark, she gambled away over $60,000 of their money," I said, my voice flat. "That's not a surprise. That's a felony. She's going to pay it back," he insisted. "She just needs some time. She offered a deal. She'll pay back every cent with interest if you drop this whole court thing. She says the lawyers are tearing the family apart. Can't we just handle this internally, for Mom and Dad's sake?" It was a tempting offer. An end to the stress, the legal fees, the public humiliation, but I knew what it was. It was coercion, wrapped in a flimsy blanket of family unity. It was Amanda trying to buy her way out of consequences, to sweep it all back under the rug where it had been festering for years. "No, Mark," I said. "There is no handling this internally. She needs to be held accountable, officially. She doesn't get to control the narrative anymore." He sighed, a sound heavy with frustration. "I just think you're being vindictive, Chloe. She made a mistake." He had fallen for it. The pressure from Amanda, Amanda. The desire for a quick and easy peace had been too much. He had chosen the path of least resistance, becoming an antagonist by proxy. The conversation ended stiffly, another crack in the already shattered foundation of our family. The process of legal discovery was slow and agonizing. It was a meticulous, soul-crushing excavation of my sister's deceit. Our lawyer, Helen, filed motion after motion, demanding access to every financial record Amanda had. Amanda's lawyers fought back at every turn, filing for extensions, claiming documents were privileged, trying to bury us in paperwork and drown us in procedural delays. It was a war of attrition, designed to exhaust my resources and my will to fight. My days took on a new, grim rhythm. My technical writing job, once a source of pride, became an afterthought. The cognitive load of the lawsuit was all-consuming. I would spend hours on the phone with Helen, going over strategy. I would spend evenings with Uncle Mike, poring over spreadsheets and bank records he'd obtained through subpoenas. We were looking for the irrefutable link, the one piece of evidence so clear and damning that no amount of legal maneuvering could obscure it. We traced the money from our parents' retirement account. The first transfer was to the brokerage account Amanda controlled. From there, things got complicated. She had moved the money through a series of transactions, trying to muddy the waters. She'd paid off her own credit card, made a down payment on a luxury car, and funneled a significant chunk into a newly registered LLC, a limited liability company with a generic name and no discernible business activity. This is classic concealment, Uncle Mike explained one night, pointing at a flowchart he'd drawn on a whiteboard in my living room. She's trying to make the money look like legitimate business expenses or investments. She thinks she's clever, but she's just following a very predictable script. Amateurs always think they're smarter than everyone else. His calm, methodical approach was the only thing keeping me sane. He was teaching me the language of the fight, turning my fear into focused analysis. The stress was immense. I couldn't sleep. I lost weight. My focus was shot. My boss at the technical writing firm, a kind man named David, called me one afternoon. "Chloe, your last few drafts have been, well, they're not up to your usual standard. Is everything okay?" I made a decision. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't pretend to care about user interface documentation while my entire life was being litigated. "David," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "I have to be honest. I'm going through a major family crisis. It's a legal battle, and it's taking everything I have. I can't give this job the attention it deserves right now." I took a deep breath. I have to quit. It felt like a failure, another concession to Amanda's chaos. But as I said the words, a strange sense of relief washed over me. I was clearing the decks. I was focusing all my energy on the one job that mattered now, getting justice for my parents and reclaiming my life. That afternoon, I sent my official resignation. I was unemployed. I was terrified. But I was also, for the first time, completely committed to the fight ahead. The evidentiary turning point came 3 months into the discovery process. It wasn't a complex financial document, but something far more personal and damning. Helen had subpoenaed Amanda's phone records and emails from her work account, arguing they were relevant because Amanda often conducted personal business, including managing our parents' investments during work hours. After a protracted legal fight, the judge agreed. A paralegal from Helen's office spent a week combing through thousands of emails. She found it buried in a folder labeled personal. It was an email chain between Amanda and her best friend, sent the day after the fateful Zoom call. Her friend had written, "Oh my God, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." Amanda's reply was a long vitriolic tirade. It was our villain monologue in writing. She wrote, "That sanctimonious little troll Chloe and my idiot uncle are trying to ruin me after everything I've done for this family. They're trying to make it seem like I stole from mom and dad when all I did was put their money to work. It's not my fault the market dipped." And Chloe, with her pathetic little sobriety and her fake job, acting like she's a saint. I've been covering for her for years, making sure mom and dad didn't see what a wreck she is. I've had to manage everything, including her. This is how she repays me? By trying to steal my inheritance? Well, I'm going to bury her. I'll show the court exactly who she is. By the time I'm done, she'll be begging me to let her back into the family. Helen read the email to me over the phone. My hands were trembling. It was all there. Her admission of intent, her motive, her malice, her plan for character assassination. It wasn't about a misunderstanding. It was a declaration of war. It completely demolished her legal team's narrative of the caring, misunderstood daughter. It was the smoking gun. "This is it, Chloe," Helen said, her voice tight with triumph. "This is the ball game. Her own words are going to convict her." With this new evidence, our strategy shifted. We were no longer just on the defensive, reacting to Amanda's attacks. We were on the offensive. Helen filed a motion for summary judgment, arguing that the evidence was so overwhelmingly in our favor that a full, drawn-out trial was unnecessary. She attached the email, Uncle Mike's full forensic report, and a sworn affidavit from me, detailing the years of manipulation. The court date was set for a formal hearing on the motion. It wouldn't be a full jury trial, but it would be my moment of confrontation. I would have to take the stand and testify. I would have to face Amanda and her lawyer in a formal setting. The thought filled me with a primal dread, but also a grim resolve. The weeks leading up to the hearing were a blur of preparation. I spent hours with Helen, going through my potential testimony. We role played the cross-examination. She was brutal, taking on the persona of Amanda's lawyer, hammering me with questions about my past, my addiction, my mental health. Why should the court believe a word you say? Aren't you a known manipulator? Isn't it true you were institutionalized for depression? It was excruciating, but necessary. It was exposure therapy for the courtroom. My therapist gave me grounding techniques to use on the stand. Feel your feet on the floor, she said. Focus on your breath. Answer only the question that is asked. Do not let him bait you. You are not on trial here. Your past is not on trial. Your sister's actions are. The day of the hearing, I wore a simple gray suit Uncle Mike had helped me pick out. It felt like armor. As we walked into the courthouse, I saw Amanda and her husband across the lobby. She looked thin, brittle. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a tight, defensive fury. She refused to look at me, staring straight ahead as if I didn't exist. For a moment, I almost felt a sliver of pity for her. Almost. Then I remembered the email, the words, "I'm going to bury her," and the feeling vanished, replaced by cold determination. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined, paneled in dark wood that seemed to absorb all the light. My parents weren't there. Helen had insisted it would be too stressful for them. It was just me, Uncle Mike, and Helen on one side, and Amanda, her husband, and her lawyer on the other. A grim little family reunion presided over by a judge with a tired face. When it was my turn to testify, my heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. I walked to the stand, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. I sat down and focused on my feet, planted firmly on the floor. I looked at Helen, who gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. My testimony under Helen's questioning was straightforward. I recounted the events of the Zoom call. I explained the small cash withdrawals I had made for my parents, confirming that I had their permission for each one. I spoke about Amanda's escalating demands for my time and her dismissal of my life. I was calm. I was factual. I was credible. Then came the cross-examination. Amanda's lawyer, a man with a florid face and a booming voice, approached the stand like a predator. He started with a sneer. "Miss Evans, let's talk about your past. You have a history of substance abuse, correct?" "I am in recovery from a past addiction, yes," I said, my voice even. "And a history of severe depression, requiring hospitalization. I received treatment for depression 5 years ago." "Yes," he paced back and forth. "So you're asking this court to believe your version of events, the version told by a person with a documented history of instability and drug-seeking behavior, over the word of your sister, a respected financial manager with a spotless record?" "I am asking the court to look at the evidence," I said, my voice not wavering. I didn't look at Amanda. I looked directly at the judge. The bank records, the brokerage statements, my sister's own emails. He tried to trip me up, to twist my words, to make me angry or emotional. He brought up my divorce. He brought up my job loss. With every question, I felt a flash of rage, but I channeled it into stillness. I remembered my therapist's words. "You are not on trial here." I answered calmly. "Yes, no, I don't recall. The evidence speaks for itself." He was throwing mud, but none of it was sticking. After 20 minutes, seeing he was getting nowhere, he dismissed me with a frustrated wave. The rest of the hearing was a methodical presentation of the facts. Uncle Mike took the stand as an expert witness, and with chilling precision, he walked the judge through the labyrinth of Amanda's financial transactions. He explained how she had bypassed security protocols, how she had moved money into the Shell LLC, how the high-risk stocks she'd purchased were completely inappropriate for a retirement portfolio. He presented charts and graphs that made the theft undeniable. Finally, Helen presented her trump card. "Your Honor, we would like to enter into evidence Exhibit D, an email from the defendant to a third party, dated the day after the family meeting that initiated these proceedings." She placed a copy on the judge's bench. The judge read it, his expression hardening. He looked over the top of his glasses at Amanda. The silence in the room was deafening. In that moment, I knew we had won. The email had done its work. It had revealed the malice that the financial data could only imply. The judge's ruling was swift and brutal. He granted our motion for summary judgment. He issued an immediate order removing Amanda as power of attorney and appointing a neutral third-party fiduciary to manage my parents' affairs. He ordered Amanda to liquidate the remaining assets in the brokerage account and her LLC, and to repay the full amount of the initial capital, plus interest and all of our legal fees, to our parents' estate within 90 days. It was a comprehensive victory, but it felt strangely hollow. The judge's words, while vindicating, couldn't undo the years of damage. Amanda sat stone-faced as the verdict was read, her mask of composure absolute. But as she stood to leave, her eyes met mine across the courtroom. There was no remorse in them, only a cold, bottomless hatred. I had not just beaten her, I had exposed her. And for a narcissist, exposure is a fate worse than death. I knew in that moment that while the legal battle was over, our relationship was severed forever. There would be no reconciliation, no apology, just a scorched earth where a family used to be. The aftermath was a strange, quiet landscape. The verdict was a bittersweet form of justice. Amanda was financially ruined and publicly shamed within the family, but she faced no criminal charges. Elder financial abuse is a notoriously difficult crime to prosecute criminally, Helen explained, especially within a family. The civil judgment was the best we could hope for. It was an incomplete justice, and I had to learn to live with that. The legal system had punished the theft, but it could not touch the deeper crimes. The years of psychological warfare, the emotional abuse, the calculated destruction of my self-esteem. In therapy, I grappled with this. I won, I told my therapist one afternoon, so why doesn't it feel like a victory? Because the courtroom can't give you what you really want, she said gently. It can't give you a sister who loves you. It can't give you an apology. It can't give you back the years you spent doubting yourself. The verdict was the end of the legal process, but it's the beginning of your recovery process. Now, you have to decide what justice looks like for you. Rebuilding my life was a slow, practical process. With the lawsuit over, I had space to breathe. The first thing I did was establish permanent, non-negotiable boundaries. I blocked Amanda's number. I blocked her on social media. I sent a short, formal email to Mark and my other relatives who had sided with her or pressured me to drop the case. For the sake of my own health and well-being, I wrote, I am unable to have a relationship with you at this time. I wish you well. It was the hardest thing I'd ever written, a final, painful amputation, but it was necessary for my survival. Uncle Mike became my rock. He helped me navigate the new family dynamics, acting as a buffer. He oversaw the transfer of funds from Amanda and made sure our parents were settled and secure with the new court-appointed fiduciary. My parents, in their gentle fog, never fully understood the scope of what had happened. In a way, it was a blessing. All they knew was that Amanda was having some trouble and that Uncle Mike and I were taking care of things now. They were safe. That was the part of the victory that felt the most real. Without my old job, I was adrift for a while. The thought of going back to technical writing felt wrong, like trying to fit into clothes that no longer fit. The lawsuit had changed me. I had discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. I had learned to speak the language of lawyers and accountants. I had learned to advocate for myself. One day, I was talking to Sarah, my sponsor, about my future. You know, she said, you've been through a war. You should use that. There are so many people out there, especially women, who are being steamrolled by family members in probate court who don't know how to fight back. A seed was planted. I started taking online paralegal courses, focusing on estate and probate law. I volunteered with a local elder advocacy group, the very kind of organization that helps people like my parents. I found I was good at it. I could listen to someone's story of being bullied and gaslit by a relative, and I could say, with absolute conviction, I believe you, and here's what you can do next. My trauma, once a source of shame, had become a source of empathy and strength. Today, 2 years have passed since the hearing. I have a new job, a real job, working as a certified advocate for a nonprofit that protects seniors from financial exploitation. It doesn't pay as much as my old job, but it feeds my soul. My resignation letter to my old life was the lawsuit. My invoice was the justice I fought for, not just the money, but the right to my own story. I live in a small apartment that is entirely my own. It is quiet. It is safe. Sometimes the ghosts of the past visit, a stray thought, a memory of a cutting remark from Amanda, a pang of grief for the family I thought I had. But the ghosts don't stay long. I have my work. I have my sobriety. I have a small, carefully chosen circle of friends who know my story and love me not in spite of my scars, but because of them. I have my uncle, who calls me every Sunday. I have myself. I have a framed photo on my desk. It's of me and my parents, taken last summer at the botanical gardens. My mom is holding my hand, and my dad is smiling, a genuine, untroubled smile. I am standing between them, and I look peaceful. I am not the family mess, and I am not the family hero. I am just Chloe, and for the first time in my life, that is more than enough. The scars are there, a permanent reminder of the battle, but I am no longer just a survivor. I am the architect of my own quiet, resilient, and finally peaceful life. Well, that was a ride, wasn't it? If you're still here after all that legal drama and family trauma, you deserve a medal, or at least a very comfortable chair and a strong cup of tea. Seriously, your attention span is heroic. Thank you for sticking with me to the end of this marathon. If you feel so inclined after that emotional workout, maybe give that subscribe button a little click. It would be much appreciated.